Welcome back to One Piece Anime Review. This is special number 4, part 2. And this we're reviewing the 4th, 5th, and 6th films of the 13 films that were released. The first film is Dead End Adventure. And it's the first film to go beyond the hour-long mark, the hour mark. This film is roughly 1 hour and 35 minutes. Yep, and the story for this film is that the Straw Hats get caught up in a race, which is pretty much the basis of this film. And Luffy meets up with a bounty hunter who apparently is after this other guy who seems like it's a higher bounty he does. Now, it's stated that this takes place just after Alabasta, but Luffy and the crew don't know about Luffy's raised bounty, which they don't exactly... Yeah, and they keep stating that the whole film that his bounty is 30 million, which at this point is supposed to be 100 million. Yeah, they don't find out too much later his bounty is actually higher than the main villain of the film. And it turns out the main villain's actually connected to the bounty hunter. Simply put, he destroyed his hometown. And it's implied that he's like the only survivor, even though there was actually more than just him surviving. It was actually 2 other people who survived. One, of course, was an old man who was basically serving as this guy's... the guy who sort of takes care of the steam part of his furnace on his steamship. Yeah, it's actually the first steamship seen in One Piece, which is interesting. That I can think of anyways, because all the ships have got sails on it. Let's see. Yeah, and it turns out that this old man's assistant, who they think is a boy, it's later revealed to be a girl. Yep. Because, well, this is nothing unusual. Not the first time I've seen this, though. The little girl is supposed to be 8 years. It's supposed to be about 11, because apparently this guy's hometown was destroyed 8 years prior. So it's not stated how old this bounty hunter is. He looks like he's probably about 16, 17-ish, because I'm not sure exactly how old he was supposed to be in the past, because the girl was supposed to be 3 years old. It just kind of looked like she's 3, and of course now she looks like she's 11. So that means he's, and this is just a theory, he might be 16 or 17. My guess is he's probably 16 because he's pretty tall. So he's probably in his mid-teens. That's my personal guess anyways. And at one point, and this is a common return trend basically in these films, anybody that steps on Luffy's hat gets punched really hard. And not only does the main villain stomp on his head, he also damages his hat as well. Though when Luffy gets it back later, he asks Nami to fix the hat. And she's like, no problem, I'll do it. Yeah, apparently, Nami, aside from serving as a navigator, and of course the person who gets all their money, apparently one of her other jobs is to take care of Luffy's hat. In case it gets damaged, she's the one that takes care because apparently she's a seamstress. Okay, fine. And also, she's the only person in the crew actually allowed to wear Luffy's hat without Luffy getting upset about it. As far as I know, she's the only person ever seen wearing the hat. She's actually wears it she wears it in Island Park. I think it's like one at a time when Luffy gets lost and leaves his hat behind, but that's the only time I can think of he puts on a hat. This 4th though was actually pretty good, for the most part. And plus they reveal somebody who's sort of a fellow fisherman of Arlong, because Arlong's referenced in this film, and he's a rival of his. And, oh yeah, and everybody's getting Eternal Post, and apparently they're all taken to a place that's similar to G8. I'm not kidding. Taken to some place G8. Now, it's implied that in the anime, this film takes place between Goat Island and Rainbow Mist. That's where this film takes place. The following film takes place after Skypiea, though it doesn't have all the damage, which I'll get to the film in a minute. Basically, with the exception of the 5th film, basically this one and the 6th one feel very small scale, and doesn't really affect a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's the 4th film is actually pretty good. I give this one definitely a 9 out of 10. Next one is The Cursed Holy Sword, where it explores Zoro's past. Probably the only time ever in the whole entire history of One Piece they actually do this, where apparently the main villain of this film is an old friend of his, who's known him since childhood. And basically, they promised to that they would fill each other's dreams. Like Zoro become the world's greatest swordsman, and the other guy, what is his name? Excuse me, his name is trying to think here. Saga. Yeah. He wants to master the sword of justice. That's basically what he wants to do. Okay, fine. And most of the film basically implies Zoro portray the crew, and him and Zoro and Sanji do fight, and it's not slapstick. He actually feels like a real actual fight. But Zoro had really no choice in the matter, and basically he was just there just to gather up 3 orbs, which they were gathered up when the second time that Saga's fiance is seen. Yeah, it turns out that this priestess Maya is actually Saga's fiance, and Luffy does of course great job protecting her toward the end of the movie. And because everyone gets separated, Luffy just happens to find the orbs and happens to know exactly where these towers are, just by sheer coincidence. And with this particular film, this one feels a lot more grand scale, and this one feels like an actual film, unlike the previous film, which you can kind of see as sort of like an extended, like an actual arc of the series, just made into an hour-and-a-half film. This one feels much more grander scale, and the beginning, the way the opening sequence of the film looks, it looks kind of similar to how the Super Sentai does their crossover films. Yeah, it's very similar style, font and sequence. Like I kind of expect because I've seen the 35th anniversary film. I was kind of expecting one of the characters to basically just like blow a hole through the title, because I've seen that film several times. It's actually a great film. I highly recommend it. It's $199. The film that celebrates the 30th anniversary of the Super Sentai franchise. Yeah, it's like they copied that particular same style of font for this particular film. Now, the 35th anniversary film came out in 2011. Curse the Holy Sword came out in 2004. Yeah. The previous film came out the previous year. Yeah, that's one thing interesting though about these films. It's like they come out one every year. I would say that when they stopped doing this, I'd say, let's see, it's after the 8th film that they don't come out as frequently as they would before. Now, of the 3 films I'm reviewing, Curse the Holy Sword is 1 hour and 35 minutes. A little bit longer than the previous film, and the people who they help out, Maya's people, are actually based upon the Maya civilization. A civilization that no longer exists. Excuse me, but there are people who are descended from that civilization still alive today. But as for the civilization itself, the country itself no longer exists. So yeah, and I think it's weird though that Luffy, when Luffy gets separated from the crew, basically Usopp goes with them, and you have Chopper. Oh, I should point out though, the 4th film is actually the first one to feature Nico Robin in the films, and she's featured throughout the rest of the films, from the 4th film onwards. I'm not really sure exactly what was the first film to feature Frankie. I think Brook, his first time he was featured, was Strong World. Yeah, I think Strong World was the first time he was featured, which I've already reviewed that, but this is about Curse the Holy Sword. The sword that's basically the main focus of this film is really long. The only time I've seen a sword this long in an anime was in Bleach. Basically, it was, I'm trying to think. It was, basically its length. It's the same length as Ichigo's sword from Bleach. Yeah, it's the same exact length. It doesn't matter if it's his original sword he had or his second one, the one that's basically constantly wrapped up and basically on his back. But it's the same length. It's really long. The sword itself does get destroyed in the film. It's called the 7-Star Sword, and it's weird, and there's a lot of magic involved with it. And basically, it possessed the main villain, basically. And even after the sword is destroyed, the power gets transferred to his body. Luffy beats him up, and of course, well, Luffy doesn't technically beat him. This is the only time in the film where Luffy does not defeat the main villain. Actually, it's one of 2. This also happens in the following film as well. Or I can't get help. This one, basically, Zoro actually defeats the main villain of the film. Now, when they have these 3 orbs going to these separate towers, we have one tower where it's, I think it's Sanji and someone from Maya's village. Another one is Robin and Chopper. And the third one is Nami and Usopp. But Luffy takes great care to make sure that Maya and her grandmother get to this central tower, and he protects them. He does a really good job of it. It's kind of like this film could easily also fit into a film it could also be a film that one of the films of Naruto could easily do, because of Luffy being a sort of a bodyguard to this priestess. It has similar elements to Naruto Shippuden the movie because protected priestess, Luffy carrying on her back, carrying her on his back, just like how Naruto did it in Naruto Shippuden the movie. Though this film came out several years before Naruto Shippuden the movie. Let me look it up. When did that one come out? Let me see. Because this film came out in 2004. Let's see. Naruto Shippuden the movie came out in 2007. So yeah. So basically, it's kind of like maybe that, even though that this film was made by a different studio, because Naruto was made by Naruto Shippuden and Boruto made by Studio Pierrot. This one's made by let's see, who made this film? I think it was let's see, what is the studio that made this film? I think it might be TV Tokyo. Yeah, I think it's so. It's distributed by Toei Company. But so Toei, the same person, same company that made the Godzilla movies, made this film. So maybe the writers of Shippuden probably saw this particular film, Curse of Holy Sword, and simply took elements of this film and made it into Shippuden. But I saw this film after I saw Naruto Shippuden the movie. Though that film's actually pretty good, but yeah, this is something else. But it's a great film overall, and great development for Zoro. And yeah, and everyone wears like different outfits they wear in the series, but yeah, it's great overall. I give this film also a 9 out of 10. Great film. Next one is Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island. And this one came out in 2005. This one came out relatively 12 years ago. Yeah. This one, I should point out though, it's one of 2 films not to use the animation style from the actual series. They use the same animation style from Digimon the movie. Basically the second segment of the film. It's the same exact animation style. Now, looking at this animation style, it looks good on Luffy, Nami, Robin, and Chopper when he's in his child form. But when he's in his human size form, he looks terrible. It looks really bad on Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp. It just looks really, really bad. The rest of the original characters are fine because they only appeared in this one movie only. And this whole thing is about it kind of starts out what looks like it's similar to the Foxy Pirate stuff that usually the Davy Pirate games. Well, first it's I'm trying to think, what was the first one? Because the second one was basically a canoe trip. So I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it's basically, the first one is catching giant fish. The second challenge is I'm trying to remember. I think it's it's basically a canoe thing. It looks very similar. Now, when they did the second challenge, it looks kind of like they're going to the city of Venice. That's what it kind of looks like for the second one. The third one basically is a small cooking challenge between Sanji and this Baron's chef, and of course because they're on a giant grill, kind of like a giant skillet, they have to wear these special shoes so they don't burn their feet. And when the other guy loses, he kind of touches his hands on the skillet and kind of almost burns his hands. But yeah, but of course, Robin and Chopper disappear for some reason. Yeah, of course Chopper's seen a little bit later, but Robin just goes off, finds the Baron's former ship, and she gets somehow taken. And of course, Chopper and Usopp gets taken too. Yeah, the way these characters are taken is so bizarre. It's kind of like, oh, let's just write these characters out of the movie for a while for absolutely no reason. What else? Oh yeah, I'm not gonna spoil. I'll spoil in a minute. Basically, the twist about the Baron's crew. And it turns out that the crew was being fed to this giant flower, what looks like a giant spiral. They call this thing a lily, and apparently that's actually one part of it. The other part is in the Baron's shoulder. Yeah, this thing acts like a freaking parasite. Oh, I almost forgot for Curse of Holy Sword. The thing opens up with when Saga uses the sword for the first time. He actually slices people in half in this film. This one was actually a little more. That one was a dark opening. This one has some gross moments. Like, the whole thing of the flower growing at this guy's shoulder, acting like a freaking parasite with all Luffy's crew. Now Luffy does the thing. This is actually the first time when he battles a villain, he actually gets a little bit of help defeating him. There's this other pirate who's actually introduced in the film. Basically, he's a father of 3. He helps with basically using the Baron's. Apparently, this Baron has got like a devil power or something, or I'm not really sure. Apparently, he can make arrows appear out of thin air. And the mystery is basically of how the crew looks exactly the same after all these years. And it turns out the whole crew, with the exception of the Baron, are all plants. Yes, they're all plants. Which I'm kind of like, excuse me, okay. This is an odd little twist, but it's okay. That could explain why one of the characters has a leaf growing out of his head. That could kind of explain that. I mean, throughout the whole movie, it's like you're watching this film like the first guy seen bound on the crew, one of the challenges. You see that he has what look like a small plant growing out of his head, and the crew doesn't bring up the fact that, okay, it's odd though that you have a plant growing out of your head and none of the crew said anything about it. It's kind of the same thing with the Baron when he has a flower growing out of his shoulder. Yeah, it's very bizarre. That no one questions at all. Let's see. Well, Luffy does defeat him, and the giant lily thing gets destroyed. Though the actual lily is actually the guy's shoulder, and Luffy does free his crew with the other guy's help. And Luffy just punches the Baron, and apparently the crew was very happy that he remembered them, but he could have basically picked a new crew because they died, and the guy's never seen again. He gets defeated, of course. Luffy gets sort of reunited with his crew. I was kind of hoping he would give his crew a hug because he thought they all died. Yeah, there was at one point he thought they all died. But yeah, this was a pretty interesting movie. It has a pretty good story. Terrible animation. It's like they have 2 different animation styles or something. The background looks freaking gorgeous. Where it's very realistic animation. It's great. It's just the animation on the characters look so bad. Yeah. And I can kind of see the reason why they didn't use this ever again. This is why this particular style doesn't work very much for One Piece. It kind of works for some of the characters, but not all of them. But yeah, that's it for that film. What rating do I give Baron Obsti in the Secret Island? I get this one at 8.5 out of 10. The only reason why I take a half point off because of the terrible animation. Though, it's only on the characters, not the background one. The background looks really good. Okay, so that's it for this part. Stay tuned when I get a chance to do part 3, where I talk about the 4 remaining films, which are Giant Mecha Soldier of Cockrell Castle, The Abridged Alabasta Arc, which is Desert Princess and the Pirates Adventures in Alabasta, Episode Chopper, plus Bloom and the Winter Miracle, Cherry Blossom, of course, Dryad Chase. Next video related to this series I'm going to do is another part, my review of the episode I aired a couple days ago for the One Piece series anime, which will be part 22. That'll come up really soon. Probably later on today. Because it won't take me too long to watch this because it's only about 23 minutes. And I'll give my thoughts on the episode. So, first 2 films, 9 out of 10. Great films. Though I think the second film, I can probably give that one a I can probably upgrade to a 9.5 out of 10 simply because it's a really great story. So, 4th film, 9 out of 10. 2nd film, 9.5 out of 10. 6th film, I give this one 8.5. Like I said, half point off for the terrible animation. That's the only reason I take a half point off. But it has a great story and great voiceover. Though it keeps bugging me the fact now a lot of these films are dubbed. But yeah. So, until I see you all in the next part for this particular special, part 3, which is probably going to be aired tomorrow. I'm probably going to do this one either tomorrow or Wednesday. I haven't decided which yet. Either tomorrow or Wednesday for part 3 of special number 4. And of course, part 22 is coming up. Going to come up later today to review the most recent episode air. Okay? But until then, I will see you there. Bye.